right, we are going to talk about a topic that is pretty commonplace these days. It's talked about a lot, but really understanding what boundaries are, why we need them, and how to place them effectively as to not create total havoc and destruction in our lives. So this is a fun topic. If you know me, you know I don't really love the word boundary because it can infer a wall and something that is really strong in place. So something I'll start with before we even start on the presentation is boundaries are flexible. There's something that you can change as you go along. When trust and respect is earned in relationships, you can re-establish boundaries over and over and over again. So just because you place a boundary once doesn't mean it needs to be set there forever. It could be temporary, it could be permanent. So when we look at boundaries, do look at them as something more flexible, not something rigid. Just as a little caveat there before we get started. So what are boundaries? So boundaries are the personal limits we set for ourselves within relationships, dictating what behaviors we find acceptable and which ones we don't. So boundaries are really incorporate feelings and how we feel in relationships. And a good indicator that a boundary needs to be put in place is having a feeling of discomfort. That is showing, okay, I need to say something here. I need to establish a boundary so that I can feel at ease in this relationship. And it may or may not be the other person's quote unquote fault. They might have no idea you feel this way or that they are crossing a barrier with you. They also may be well aware that they're crossing a barrier. And so it really depends on the relationship, as we'll get into further as we go along into this presentation. The importance of boundaries. Boundaries are so important because what they do is help maintain respect, trust, and a sense of individuality within relationships. And this ensures that relationships remain healthy and balanced. This is something that comes up a lot for women. It has happened with men as well, but it comes up a lot for women because just of our society entrainment generation after generation of being subservient. And as I think we're well aware now, things are shifting, and that isn't a woman's typical role in our current society now. Our society has shifted, and we're seeing more balance in relationships and in the masculine and feminine aspects. And relationships look different than they ever have before. And there isn't a lot of rules around how male-female relationships work or same-sex relationships work even. And so this is where boundaries are more important than ever to maintain and establish respect and trust in relationships to create healthy relationships. So boundaries in new relationships, this is where boundaries are a little bit easier to establish. You need to know yourself what's acceptable and not acceptable to you. And the best time to establish these boundaries is right in the very beginning. So this is why getting to know yourself first before you enter into relationships is the most important part, because you know what works for you and what doesn't work for you, and are better able to establish those boundaries right off the bat. So when embarking in a new relationship, it's crucial to be able to have those somewhat awkward conversations about what your needs are in the relationship. And this is going to set the tone for the relationship's future dynamics. So tips for new relationships: be clear about your personal values. And this is just an important piece in whether it's a romantic relationship, work relationship, friendship, any type of relationship, is being clear about your personal values. And when you're clear about your personal values, chances are the other person will open up about their personal values, and you're going to see right away whether you're going to embark in a healthy relationship. And this is where you will also discover those red flags right away and save yourself a lot of time and energy. And, whether it's going into a new career, you want to know the people that you're working with, especially if they are in a position of power. How are things going to work in that environment? And same thing with romantic relationships. When you express your personal values and you get to discover someone else's, if they share their personal values and they're in alignment, great. They may not share their personal values at all and be very uncommunicative. And that's also a sign of an avoidant personality style, which may or may not work for you. And so ensure you communicate openly and honestly. And as if you know me, I say the truth is always the answer. We open up and allow vulnerability as we gain trust and respect. So we start with those baby steps about communicating openly and honestly. We don't want to give everybody the new relationship everything all at once, because we don't know yet who that person truly is. People take time to reveal themselves. On average, you're really going to start seeing someone's true personality around the 3 to 4 month mark. And you'll see someone either have continuous, consistent behaviors, or you're going to start seeing some things flare up. And so it's just step by step easing into a relationship and extending that olive branch and seeing, is this person trustworthy? Do we respect each other? Do we share values? And the best way to do that is by speaking clearly and authentically about who you are. And because if we pretend to be someone else, as you know, if you wear that mask, you're probably going to attract people that you actually don't even want to spend time with, because you're pretending to be someone else and they think they're communicating with someone else. So it doesn't really work. So when we do start to build these new relationships, then we just want to listen actively to the other person's boundaries as well, because that's the thing, is something that may be no big deal to you can be a very big deal to them, because we all have different perspectives and experiences in life. So avoid making those assumptions about what works for someone or doesn't work for someone, because you just never know. People could have certain words that trigger them that doesn't even faze you. So when someone's telling you, this bothers me and this doesn't work for me, then really it's respecting that person as well. Now, this doesn't always work with the narcissistic personality types, but as I said, that will reveal itself. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what to do when we're in a toxic environment, or, communicating with more of that narcissistic personality type. Because that's going to be a whole other situation. So boundaries in existing relationships, reestablishing or creating boundaries in an ongoing relationship can be super challenging. And it is also essential for the relationship's growth and health. So there can be some fear that comes up when we're going to these depths, and especially if this relationship has been established in a way. But if you're feeling uncomfortable in your own relationship, in an existing relationship, and you just have that gut feeling and you feel like you're walking on eggshells, it is time to establish some boundaries. Because as we know, being part of the Power to Heal program, when we don't establish boundaries in our environment, we don't create safety in our own environment, we get sick. Because our nervous system is on fire, constantly in fight or flight. Walking on eggshells, anticipating someone's next move, does not work for building health in your mental state, physical state, health within interconnections and relationships. And so often what happens when you want to establish these boundaries in existing relationships, the fear of abandonment and rejection can definitely arise. And also, the only way out is through, because you can't live that way. You can't live not expressing what is the truth within you. Tips for existing relationships. this is where you're going to reassess the relationships dynamics. It's going to take a super intimate, vulnerable conversation, and you have to initiate a conversation focused on mutual respect and be consistent in enforcing those boundaries, which we will talk about a little bit further down the line here on how you do that in a loving way. And if this is not working for you, you are going to want to seek professional guidance if needed. If this is toxic relationship, do not seek couples counseling. It is not going to help you. It is actually only going to make things worse for you, because the narcissistic abuse, they're very good at manipulating, and couples counseling can end up actually being secondary victimization. So you are going to want to seek professional guidance in this case only for yourself, individual professional guidance. If you're part of the Power to Heal program, you receive this anyway. This is part of the program itself. So if you need help with something like that, please do reach out, and we are here to help you navigate that, because it can be quite tricky. So healthy relationships, when you're setting boundaries, it's going to come from a place of love and mutual respect. Each person's going to listen to the other person, care about what they say, care about how they feel, and make those adjustments to bring comfort into the relationship. So even though these conversations can be very uncomfortable, once these conversations happen, they tend to enhance the relationship's quality. And from there, you will really know. That's a good indicator that you are in a healthy relationship, is when you bring something forward that's making you feel uncomfortable. The person cares. They want to listen to you. They don't dismiss it. They don't tell you that what you're saying isn't valid. They will acknowledge you. Even if they don't understand, they will seek understanding. That is a sign of a healthy relationship. So for instance, you need personal time for self-care activities, and you communicate this need and establish specific times or days where you focus on yourself. And the other person's like, yes, thanks for letting me know. And I'm so support you in spending time with yourself. They don't take it personally. They understand that it's healthy to have your own individuality and sovereignty and autonomy, and that yes, you need that personal time. Some people need more personal time than others. So this is a really good example, and often can be a place of discomfort in relationships, because you love the person and you don't want to say, hey, I need to get away from you for a while here. So, but that's healthy. That's normal to come apart and come back together. So unhealthy and codependent relationships. In codependent relationships, boundaries become blurred, leading to an over-reliance of one person on the other and a loss of personal identity. Codependent relationships are rampant in our society. It's something that it's come to us naturally. We've been very much entrained into it, and we're just untying those knots now. So it's not to vilify anyone. It's not to say, that they did this or they did that. It's how do we unwind codependent relationships? Even people that care about each other can end up in codependent behaviors, and is just unhealthy and creates all types of concerns and issues within relationships that really just aren't necessary. So signs of codependency. I'll just read this out. So excessive need for approval. One of the most telling signs of codependency is an excessive need for validation or approval from the other person. This often means altering behaviors, altering your opinions or emotions to fit someone else's preferences or expectations. The codependent individual may feel that their self-worth is determined by the acceptance and affirmation they receive from their partner, from a parent, from a coworker, from a friend. The codependent relationships can happen all over the place. So you will also see people neglecting their personal needs. A codependent person might consistently prioritize the needs, desires, or emotions of their partner above their own, often to the detriment of their well-being. They might sacrifice their own happiness, health, or ambitions to keep their partner satisfied or to keep the relationship stable. Fear of abandonment. Codependent individuals often harbor an intense fear of abandonment. This fear can manifest in clinging behaviors, jealousy, or tolerating poor treatment because they believe being alone is worse than being in an unhealthy relationship. And number 4, difficulty maintaining individuality. Maintaining individuality and personal well-being within relationships is crucial to the health of everyone involved. So those struggling with codependency often find it challenging to know where they begin and the other ends. They fear expressing their needs as it might upset or drive their partner away. As a result, they might endure behaviors or situations that make them uncomfortable or unhappy. So how to establish boundaries in a codependent or toxic relationship. It is difficult to do and so worth it. So there has to be an establishment of clear indication of what the boundary is and clear indication of what the consequence will be if the boundary is not respected, and also an acting out of the consequence. So, for example, if you're in a relationship where a partner is aggressive, when you have a disagreement, they yell or belittle or undermine, diminish, minimize what you're experiencing or going through, you can say, a good example of this would say, I need to take some time away right now, and we can come back together, check in a couple of hours, and I will let you know where I'm at and whether I'm able to talk then or not. And so chances are, in a toxic relationship, the person will not respect this. And so do exit and go anyway. So I would recommend leaving the house completely or work environment completely, whatever you can do to step away from this toxic behavior. It has to be put to a stop and be for your own mental health and well-being. Because what happens is when you're in this environment and a person is coming at you like this and you're not participating, your adrenals are constantly firing. This is putting you in fight or flight deeper, deeper, deeper. And then what happens is we end up in our animal brains. We're not thinking from our beautiful prefrontal cortex. We're not thinking logically. Anything you say or do will not be a benefit to anyone or anything. So get out of there and follow through on what you say. A couple hours later, you can either come back and be ready to have a conversation. And if the person continues, you say, okay, I'm now stepping away further. I'm going for a longer period of time. And we will come back and check in this amount of time. This loop is going to establish a boundary where it shows that you are serious about this and that you will not tolerate this behavior. Now, chances are what happens with a toxic partner is it will only exacerbate from there. And as much as I don't make the rules, I know how to follow them. Often someone with these behaviors have no interest in reconciliation or things going smoothly. They subconsciously enjoy this tumultuous relationship. And what happens is when you're on the receiving end of that, it becomes addictive. It's like heroin because there's ups and downs. So pulling ourselves out and away from that and starting to reestablish our logical brain really helps us see the relationship for what it is. And quite frankly, relationships like this, where the one person has zero interest in reconciliation, the best thing to do is get away from that relationship. altogether. And I realize that is easier said than done. There's usually multiple factors going on there. But the thing is we can't teach people healthy relationships if they have no interest in being in one. The best thing you can do is really start to establish these boundaries and self-respect for yourself, and how they behave and respond is up to them. And then it's up to you what you do with this as they continuously reveal who they are as you are establishing your boundaries. And the best way to deal with a toxic person is to put distance between them. That's the best way to teach them, not to tell them how to be or what to say, because they're not interested, they're not listening. And so really it's protecting yourself and or any children involved as well. So when is it time to seek help is when the person that you are dealing with has zero interest in finding reconciliation, zero interest in listening, zero interest in finding common ground. It is time to seek help. And so it really depends on the severity of the situation, whether you need to go and seek your own professional help, counseling, therapy, someone that understands this type of relationship dynamics. Make sure you're going to a specialist, someone that understands this, because not all therapists do. And then on the more extreme level, it may be time to seek abuse support from a local shelter or outreach center, whatever it may be in your local area. Sometimes it's time to seek help. If the person that you are trying to navigate this relationship with has zero interest in creating healthy boundaries and creating mutual respect and care, and has zero interest in how you feel as a person, it is time to seek outside help to help you navigate through this, because we need support, we need community. We've lived in society where we've been very individualized and people become isolated, and what happens is it just perpetuates things and makes them worse. And so now it will result in chronic illness of some type, whether that is a mental health chronic illness or a physical health chronic illness, usually both. And it is just not acceptable. And there is help out there. And trust me when I say it is much better to do things on your own than to be navigating day to day with someone who has zero interest in your care, or how you feel as a person. Bottom line, boundaries equal love and respect. If someone does not want to discuss where you feel comfortable and what you would like to see happen, they're dismissive, minimizing, then there isn't love and respect there. Love and respect comes from accepting people for who they are, wanting to understand what it is that they're experiencing. And that goes both ways. It goes both ways. And so boundaries are very important for our autonomy, our health, mentally and physically, and for our enjoyment of life. For being in an environment where we feel good, where we are, safety and security. And it all comes down to being able to discuss your wants and needs without fear of rejection, resentment, or angry outbursts. And so that's the bottom line. Boundaries equal love and respect.